I immigrated to Quebec a little over 2 years ago, and today I wanted to share with you guys a little list of some of the pros and cons about living here. Welcome back to the channel. Today's vlog is going to be a little bit more of a talky vlog as I kind of go through a list of things that I came up with about some pros and cons of being here in Quebec. So if you want, pause the video, grab some tea, coffee, whatever it is that you want to drink or snack on, and we'll get started. So when I had to sit down and kind of come up with a list of some of the things that are pros and cons about living here, I tried to come up with a list and then break that down into smaller categories. So the first we'll start with and get it out of the way is my apartment. I have pros to say about it, but honestly I'm gonna be very United States of myself here and say no air conditioning. In fact, there are very few apartments, at least from what I've noticed, that don't have apartments. A lot of the buildings here in Quebec City are old and were built during a time when air conditioning wasn't a necessity, or at least nothing that you really needed. So yeah, our apartment doesn't have air conditioning, and in the summer it is absolutely hot. It gets very hot here. Nowhere is near as hot as living in Arizona, of course, but yeah, we've had to buy a portable air conditioner because we were having a couple of weeks where the temperatures were just so unbearable that we were like, no, we gotta do something. So yeah, houses will sometimes have air conditioning, but for the most part, get ready to sweat in the summer if you come visit, if you stay in a place that doesn't have air conditioning. I guess a pro about that is not having air conditioning. I think that as people from the United States, we're so used to having air conditioning and being comfortable in that regard, but it's kind of nice not breathing in air conditioning air all the time. I know it's safe to do like whatever, but it's kind of, there's something about like being able to open the windows or go sit on your balcony during a day when the wind is at least blowing a little bit to kind of cool you off, and just kind of really finding in yourself a strength of getting through that. It's not fun, it's uncomfortable, but it's not the worst thing in the world. La bureaucratie. So here in Quebec, at least in Canada, there's universal health care. Essentially what that means is that taxpayers will pay taxes into allowing everyone to have access to medical care. If I need to go to the hospital, I can do it. I don't have to worry whether or not I can pay the rent, and that's really nice. But some cons to that are getting a doctor's appointment. At least here in Quebec, we have a site that you can go online and sign up for. It's a subscription. Well, you pay like a low subscription fee that helps keep the site up, but essentially what it does is it's a search for open appointments in your area. The problem is every time I've gone on there to search, there's literally nothing available in person. You can do an e-consult if that becomes available, and then that is also really hard to find. Another problem is the waiting list to get a family doctor. There are people who've waited years, 4 years or more, for a family doctor. So the health system here is kind of wonky in that regard. I've been waiting since I've gotten here, and that was, as you guys know, over 2 years ago. Supposedly our Minister of Health is supposed to be redoing some things that allow the waiting salle d'attente to be a little less full or something like that. I'm not exactly sure on the specifics, but it's supposed to force doctors, family doctors, to show their hours that they're available and be able to take on more patients. A lot of problem is that there are not enough doctors in the province. You have doctors going on their retirement, and yeah, it just creates kind of a huge problem. It's bigger than what I can really talk about and go into a lot of detail because honestly, I'm not an expert on it and I still don't understand everything about it, but I want to make it clear that it's really not, depending on your situation, it is not that awful. Honestly, I don't mind waiting. I just wish that there were people who really, really need to be seen by doctors and have surgeries and things like that, be able to do it. And with the pandemic, that kind of put a magnifying glass, if you will, on the problem at hand. So yeah, honestly, it's better than having to pay copays anytime you want to go to a doctor. And it doesn't mean I can't go to a doctor. It just means that I am going to have to wait if I don't want to go to a private doctor and pay money. So I can still get care if I want, just making a point to say that, but it's just a little bit more complicated. Les cours de francisation. Alright, so this is where I talk about my French classes. Here in Quebec, all immigrants get an opportunity to take French courses. It's not just for immigrants, it's also for anybody who is working and needs to learn French. So the cours de francisation is for basically anybody that is not French speaking that needs to learn. Now for immigrants, it's completely free, so I'm able to do it. Some cons about these classes are that at least in the higher levels, from what I know and my experience, is that they're mixed. So in, for example, a level 7, level 8, those two classes are combined. So if I'm a level 8, there are also going to be level 7 people in my class. So if you've already done niveau 7, you're going to basically be repeating it, which is kind of frustrating, and a lot of times we were doing some of the same things, which I guess looking back necessarily isn't a horrible thing because it's kind of reinforcing what you've learned, but at the same time there are moments where it can be redundant and it can be boring. So if you are going to be immigrating here and you are going to need to take classes, keep that in mind. I will say that the MIFI, and I off the top of my head cannot remember what that acronym stands for. I'm gonna put it here for you guys. Essentially, they, after I think niveau 6, expect you to be ready and already kind of getting out there into the workforce and finding a job, and that is true for some people. Some people are ready to do it. So I feel like the higher levels get, how can I say this? Some of the higher levels get neglected, if you will, in my opinion. That's not to say that the teachers aren't great. The teachers that I had were really awesome, and I really appreciated them, you know, taking their time with us and teaching us French. Another con is the test results. So after every level or niveau, you will have an exam. So you'll do four exams: compréhension orale, compréhension écrite, production orale, et production écrite. And after those exams, you get your test results, so you'll see, you know, out of however many questions there were, what you got, whether you passed or failed, that kind of thing. But you cannot see what you missed, and that is a huge frustration for me, and not even really your teachers can talk with you about it. I think it's to, you know, keep everything fair, so you're not like going to other people and being like, ah, this is what I got wrong, make sure you get it right. Though I don't know, I think it would be really helpful if after the exams you can look at your, for example, production écrite, where you write something, and see, you know, what was it that I made a mistake on? What were the things that I missed the most or didn't do or need to work on? That's kind of frustrating as a learner. Yeah, I don't really understand what the purpose of that is. Another con is that the classes are not organized by CEGEP. So CEGEP essentially in Quebec is like community college for the US, more or less. If you want to go to CEGEP or university, the admissions don't recognize your successes in your French classes as part of the admission process. You need to actually take another exam to prove your proficiency in the language. That being said, I think the classes Francesation are a great way to learn French and learn the language and practice in a safe setting. A lot of things in the class, you're in a very safe environment, so until you get to the higher levels, you're gonna be very much like tack on the technique of things and how to speak properly. And then at the higher levels, you'll still have that, but you get a little bit of the real life aspect of it, or les expressions québécois, that kind of thing. But yeah, it's a great way to learn French. It boosted my confidence, and as an immigrant, to anyone out there who is going to be coming here, if you happen to see this video, I really recommend doing it. I think it's a great way to learn the language, meet new friends, and have a good experience. Les moyens de transport. There are, honestly, in terms of modes of transport here, there's not really any cons that I can think of. Québec City is a really easy city to walk around in. There's buses that you can take, you can ride your bike, or you can walk around. Of course you can drive if you have a car. A lot of people here really take the buses and they bike around during the summer. Everyone is biking. There are people that even bike in the winter. But yeah, a lot of things are really easy to get to, and I really like that. Living in the United States, I feel like a lot of places, in my experience, in the places that I have lived, are spread out. You know, you can't really get to places that easily, and if you do decide to walk anywhere, people are gonna look at you weird, or they might stop and be like, hey, do you need a ride? I think if you're walking anywhere, people assume that, I don't know, people just don't walk places in the US. I don't know. Here in Quebec, you can walk everywhere. You can take your bike, you can ride the bus. I really love it. Something that I really loved about coming here when I would visit was the bus. I really found riding the bus to be just a really fun time, and yeah, I really enjoyed it, because I had never done that in the US. I'd never taken a bus to get places. I would always drive. I would never walk. But here, I'm walking everywhere. I'm taking the bus. I ride my bike during the summer. It's a really great city for that, and most places are really close. I would say one con that I do have is that on the main bus lines are kind of packed in the morning and in the afternoon, depending on rush hour, which during a pandemic is not really that fun. That's my only con. L'hiver. Okay, I would be remiss if I did not talk about the winter here. It is no secret that Quebec is a very snowy place and pretty cold in the winter. The lowest temperature that I have experienced here outside was -27, but it was getting pretty cold during the nights when I'm not outside. So yeah, it gets pretty cold here. Pros about the winter, because I know there are people out there that are like, ugh, the winter. I think it's beautiful. I love the snow. I think it's beautiful, and you know, maybe you could argue that's because I lived in Arizona, but I have lived in places where it snowed before. There's something about snow that just, I don't know, I love it. And here in the winter, there are plenty of activities to do. A lot of people here love the winter. They get out, they're moving and grooving. I've always said that here in the winter, I feel like there's a community aspect to it as well, versus in certain places in the US. I feel like people grumble about the winter and they're like, ugh, it's snowing again, and they hate it. But I feel like here there's sort of this collective moan about the winter, and you kind of just strap on your winter boots and you get over it and you get through it together. People help each other get rid of the snow. Yeah, there's a collective moan, but people enjoy the winter for the most part. We have the winter carnival, which happens in February every year and has been happening since, well, the second time around, 1950, and it is one of the biggest winter carnivals in the world. It's really fun, and people come from all over to come and experience it. Before Christmas, we have the German market, which is always a great time to go and experience as well. Ice skating, there's skiing, sledding. There's all kinds of stuff to do in the winter, so it's not as bad as everyone thinks it is, and you come to appreciate it in a way. I can't really think of any cons for the winter except for snow shoveling, but even then it's kind of low on my list of cons because it's kind of free exercise. If you are someone that is able to do it and you have someone that can help you, get out there, put on your Fitbits, and shovel away, and before you know it, within 20 minutes you have burned around 300 calories. So if you're really into fitness and exercising, snow shoveling is for you. Une ville d'histoire. There is a lot of history here in Quebec. It's a very historical place. We live in one of the oldest cities in North America, and yeah, I really love it. As someone who loves history, if I do say so myself, I find a lot of the architecture here to be beautiful. And in my neighborhood and in a lot of neighborhoods, you can see sort of a timeline, if you will, or not necessarily a timeline, I don't mean timeline, but a lot of the apartments that are next to each other are not necessarily the same. So you'll have an old vintage style apartment right next to something that was built in maybe like the 1960s or something. Like for example, my apartment is 100 years old, probably a little over 100 years old at this point. And it used to be a house and it was turned into three apartments. And there is a building right next to mine that was built in the 30s, but right next to it, something more modern. I really love that aspect of the neighborhood I live in. And of course, when you go into Vieux Quebec, there is a lot of the architecture from the 17th, 18th centuries, even the 15th century. I mean, it's so beautiful, some of these places, and there are ancestral homes here, so it's so beautiful here. I love history, and there's lots of history to uncover here. Anyway, there's that. Culture. The people here are very easy, very welcoming, very laid back. Well, not very, but they're laid back compared to the US, where I feel that depending on where you're from or where you live, you are going to be mostly keeping to yourself. Here, I feel like people do that, but they're also open to being open to others, or talking to other people, or involving people in what they're doing, that kind of thing. I don't know how to explain it, but there's like this sense of community that I've never experienced until I came here. So I really like that. People are also very proud of their language here. We speak French in Quebec, the province. French is of course spoken all over Canada, but very much spoken here. I would say that people are proud of their language, but not in like an overly open way about it, depending. I think it depends on who they are. I'll say that. I want to give everyone the benefit of the doubt, but you know how it is in the US, people are very much like English, English, English. Here with the language, people are kind of protective of it, and after learning a bit more of the history of the province itself, you kind of get an understanding as to a why in terms of protecting that part of the culture, and I do appreciate that. You know, I really enjoy speaking French. Yeah, you see why people are protective of it, but there's no one forcing you to speak French, if that makes sense. I've never once had anyone come up to me while I was speaking English and be like, you need to speak French, we live in a French province. There's also a culture here of cafes and restaurants. Like, I feel like there's not, and again, this is just based off of where I have lived, I feel like there's not really a huge cafe culture. A lot of people go to cafes here and just have a chat, and they work on their homework, and they have coffee, and they have tea, and they're hanging out for multiple hours. And that's totally fine, and there's no rush. Same with restaurants. I don't know, I think there's a culture around just relaxing and around food here in general, which food brings people together. What can I say? I like it. I think it's very cool. I think it's neat. And one last pro for me here is that people are not overly proud of the province or the country. And what I mean by that is in the US, there are flags literally all over the place. They're in people's front yards, they're at businesses, they're on people's shirts and jackets, and there are whole outfits that look like the American flag. and it is in your face at all times that you live in the US, and that is the land of free. And here I go outside and there are, do you know when there are Quebec flags around? June 24th, Saint Jean-Baptiste. There are more Quebec flags all around because people are celebrating that day. That's technically our like 4th of July in the province. Of course there's Canada Day. That's when I see some Canadian flags, but not even really here in the province. But yeah, there are no flags just hanging in people's, you know, yards, or people don't wear the flag. I don't see people like in dresses that are the Canadian flag or the Quebec flag. I'm sure it exists. I'm absolutely 100% sure it exists. It's not in your face. It's not like, it's just not like it is in the US, and I really appreciate that. And if you're like, what are you talking about? Spend some time out of the US for a few weeks and you'll understand what I mean. Awesome. So yeah, that's it. That's my list of things. Honestly, I had a hard time coming up with cons. I was asking colleagues, what do I complain about? Is there anything that do I chial about anything? It was a little bit difficult to come up with a list of cons in my list, and even then some of them are just like little minuscule things that don't even really matter. But for the most part, and not even for the most part, but even more than that, I've really love it here. I love living here. I love everything about it, and I've really openly embraced the culture and the people, and I feel way more Quebecoise than I did when I first got here. I think a lot of that does have to do with taking French classes and learning the language, because now I can communicate with people, I can work, I can live my life here, and I don't necessarily feel like a foreigner or an outsider. I know that I'm privileged in being able to say that, and I want to recognize that, because I know that not every single person that comes here has an easy time like I have. I don't have any plans on ever moving back to the US. In fact, this year I'll be able to apply for my citizenship for Canada, so I'm really looking forward to that. I don't feel American. I don't feel like someone from the US. I don't feel like I ever fit in there. And you know, moving to a country or immigrating to a country where you just feel like you belong is so life-changing. I feel like my life has changed so much since I have gotten here. I've come to realize that I am so capable of doing so many things, and even in another language, and that's so cool to me. And I feel way more open to things than I've ever have before. And yeah, I don't have any plans on returning to the US to live, to visit, but not to live. It's not for me to be part of that culture, as I've never really felt like I fit in with that culture. I tried to record this video a while ago and I wasn't very well prepared for it, but I do remember a couple questions that I got. Someone asked me, what do I miss the most about the US, if I miss anything? I really do miss my friends, I think the most, just being able to like go out and hang out, but I feel like that's a collective feel right now. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say Target. Of course I would say that, right? Of course I would say Target. I do miss Target. I do miss it. I know it had its run here in Canada, but didn't do so great. There are some cute things at Target that I miss. So silly of me. But yeah, I don't really miss too much, honestly. I think if I missed a lot of things, like, what would that mean? You know, what would that be like? I don't know. I'm pretty easygoing. I have said goodbye to that life, and I'm embracing my new life here, and I'm fine with that. The other question was about my French. My level of French, is it good? How is it? Whatever. My French is really good these days. In fact, you know, I've even surprised myself in some of the job interviews that I've had recently speaking in French. You know, after you learn the language and you have an ability to be immersed into the culture and speak the language every day, it really helps. So yeah, it's second nature to me. I prefer it. We speak English here at home, but we speak a little more French than we do English. Though when we are out and about, I will speak French, and that is not because I'm uncomfortable speaking English in front of people. It's just that, I don't know, we're here, why not? So yeah, my French is I'm fluent. And with my Bright Language test that I took, I'm officially a B2, which is intermediate. yeah, intermediate, but I'm on the cusp of being advanced, which is great. There's so much that learning a new language can do for you, so that's that. Alright you guys, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you sticking with me. I know this video was a little bit long, and I hope that it gives you a little insight into how it's been or what I think about living in Quebec. I recommend it. If anyone out there is wanting to immigrate here, or you're thinking about moving, or even to visit, I highly suggest doing it. It's a great place. I did make a video about why I immigrated here. I'll leave that down in the description below. If you made it this far, leave me a comment down below that tells me why you like winter, and if you don't like winter, why you don't like winter. I want to know. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you in the next video. Take care everybody. I love you. Bye. 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 Bye.